Thank you. I come from Uganda, a country in East Africa. And we have a common thing we say across the country, across all the churches. I'm going to teach you what we do in our churches. We say, God is good. And oftentimes the congregation will say, all the time. And then the person will respond and say, all the time. And people will say, God is good. So I want us to practice being Ugandan today, okay? God is good all the time. And all the time. God is good. We have something we add to that, and that's his nature. Wow. Okay, let's do it again. God is good all the time. And all the time. God is good. And that's his nature. Wow. Isn't that true about our God? It was Ban Ki-moon, General Secretary of the United Nations, who said this, that we live in a world of great contradictions. Plenty of food, yet people go starving to death every single day. Plenty of water, yet kids die from drinking unclean water. Great advances in technology and research, yet daily women die giving birth. A world of great contradictions. And my eyes have seen a lot of these contradictions. Standing here makes me see some of these contradictions. My life has been affected by these contradictions. And so I hope today to walk with you on a journey to hopefully show you what's happening around the world, what's happening in your world, so that together we might find our place in this world. That's me standing in Naguru slum, the second largest slum in East and Central Africa, only second to the Kibera slum. I want to share with you how I ended up in the slum and what life was like, the thoughts that went through my mind, the questions I couldn't answer sitting in one of those dark rooms. See, when I was 8 years old, my father was taken away from me. I and 5 of my siblings watched as life changed quickly. My father was murdered. Crime was not uncommon in my community. And when he was murdered, things changed for us quickly. See, my mother, she was married to him, but married off at the age of 15. Never went to school. Educating the girl child was not considered important. And so, when my mother realized that her life had changed with the loss of my dad, then she had to figure out, what does she do with 6 children? And slowly by slowly, we saw life change until we ended up right in the center of Naguru slum. And I and my 6 siblings, we began to realize that things are changing. Fast doors began to close. The first door that closed for us was the door of having a father in our home. My father was a fun man. He was a lawyer. He loved soccer. And whenever he came back home, he couldn't wait to take off that suit and tie. And we all sit behind in this truck, and we're hitting this truck as we're going, shouting and yelling his favorite team. It was Kampala City Council Football Club. And so we used to go KCC, KCC as we head down to the field. And I remember that whenever his team won, that was the best time to ask him for anything. Because you knew it was almost guaranteed he'd give that to you. Now, if his team lost, you get lost too. And so that was our situation, but we loved him. Having a dad, our home was now gone. Quiet. And so my mom her health was bad and she's beginning to figure out, what do I do? I'll tell you briefly about Naguru Slum. Naguru Slum has a reputation. I cannot find the words in English to describe what you see and feel and smell when you enter Naguru Slum. Let me try to paint a picture. If you can imagine a deep, long valley, 19,000 houses, small houses, one after another, a line of them sharing a single toilet. No place to even pour dirty water except right in front of you so that it can pass and go all the way to the valley. Now you ask me, Richmond, where did kids play? Kids love to play. And I would tell you, there was no place except in those very valleys, in those very gullies where this dirty water was going through. And so I would say to you that when my mom said to us there was no more money and we were going to Naguru, that was probably the longest journey of my life. We only lived 3 miles away from Naguru. But picking up what we belonged to us and beginning to go towards Naguru, that was a very long journey. Life began to change. I reached a point when I began to wait, and I'll give you briefly a description of our home. On your left, that was our home with a white curtain. Next to it is another home that is almost like a storeroom. Another family living there. Next to it was another family. Next to it was another family. Once we all 6 of us and my mom, as we were in this place, we began to realize that life can be difficult. There are places in this world where dignity is stripped from people, where minds change, where what was beautiful the child forgets the memory of what beauty looks like. And that was there for me. I titled this slide The Wait because of 2 reasons. One, I was every day waiting for something that would take my life. Malaria. See, mosquitoes breed from stagnant water. And the amount of mosquito that infested that community is just too many to count. And every day I used to wake up and the first thing I did was look on my hands to see how many bumps were on my skin as a result of these mosquito bites. Because enough bumps meant the chances of getting malaria were high. I had seen as kids die as we buried friends. And for me, it was a real fear. There was a weight in my mind saying, I hope this does not happen to me, but if malaria is caused by mosquitoes, then chances of getting malaria were high. But there was another weight. See, my mother, she went to one of her friends and said, oh, my 6 kids, they're not in school, they have no food, we have no water, we have nothing. And if nothing changes, we will bury them one by one. Someone's got to help me. And so her friend said, why don't you go to the church? Go to the church. They have this program that supports children. You go there and stand on that line. So many people on the waiting list, but you go and stand that line. Do not move. And so my mother went to the church. And there she got this man called David, who was a worker. And David heard her story, immediately came to our home, took our pictures, and they said for us, wait. If someone stops to sponsor you, we'll let you know immediately. I remember standing and taking that picture. It was like a picture of hope whenever that flash went off. 3.5 months later, the same David who came to take pictures at our home returned, this time with the biggest smile on his face. And David said to my mother, Richmond has got a sponsor. Now, I come from the Bagisu tribe. And the way we celebrate is two ways. One, the men usually will come up and do what they call shoulder dancing. And the men will go, Ezekiel! And this is how we'll go whenever it's celebration time. The women, on the other hand, do what we call ululation. Now they do that while dancing as well. I was standing at a distance, and so I saw my mom throw the broom. And she began going, and I looked, I said, that's good news. And I ran off to my mom, and my mom looked at me and said, you've got a sponsor. I knew in that moment that my life had changed. We ran off to the church, and there I received Pastor Peter and Uncle Viancy, and they began to tell me, welcome. I'll show you a quick picture that happened. See, I was now off the street. Kind of cute, eh? Cleaned up. Put on white. By that time, bow ties were very popular. Put on my bow tie for the first time. It's amazing. Someone I did not know stopped looking at themselves, what they want, what makes them more comfortable. Me, in this world where it's all about me, my comfort, it's all me. I deserve it. I worked for it. It's mine. And she moved past that to look up. And there she saw a boy who needed sponsorship. At $38 a month, I began to receive things that changed my life. The first thing I received was food. Second thing I received was health care. I got my project number. I can never forget it. Uncle Bianci bent over. I can never forget his face, and he said, welcome, Richmond. From today on, your number is UG129/0064. Never forget it. See, anytime I fell sick, all I had to do was go over to the family clinic. Just tell them UG129/0064. They'll look me up in the S&G list, and you're sponsored. They treat me and don't care about the bill. Education. I was told, Richmond, you can now go back to school. See, I grew up in a country where education is private. If your parents cannot afford to go to school, sorry, it doesn't matter how gifted you are. And that was it for me. But I want to say to you that there was something that I consider very, very important, and that was social development. When I ask you the question, describe poverty, how would you go about answering that question? Some of you might use words like poverty is lack of food. It's lack of clothing. It's lack of a roof over your head. It's lack of warm beddings. It's lack of water, access to Medicare. That might be the terminologies that you might use to describe poverty. And I'd like to say to you that you would probably be right, but only half right in my estimation. Because true poverty, the true monster of poverty that destroys children, you cannot see with your physical eyes. But because it affected me, I know it when I see it. See, poverty for me was like a voice. It attacked me in ways I cannot describe. But I kept feeling and hearing words like, you are nothing. You will be nothing. Nobody wants you. Oh, you are alone. No permission to dream. Oh, I want to be a pilot. A pilot? You can't even have food to eat today. How can you dream of being a pilot? And that's why money is not the answer. Because such poverty, money can do nothing. So I appreciate God that there was a young lady called Heather, 15 years old, who chose to sponsor me. And I received a letter from her 3 times a year. And she used words like, Richmond, I love you. Richmond, I'm praying for you. She used to help with the Presbyterian church with the kids there. And she sent pictures of these kids and says, the kids prayed for you. Sent me a picture of her dog and asked me questions like, do you love dogs? I'll say to you, I think she didn't understand that we don't have a pet culture back home. Every time you see a dog, you reach out for a slip. Well, this is the United States, so I can't tell you what we do when we do that. But I remember her asking me, do you love dogs? And I didn't know what to say. I remember replying and saying, yes, I love dogs. But she sent me stickers. She sent me cards that had music in them. It's amazing that the things that actually matter, the things that could actually change the world for a child, are so simple. It's not the big things. It's the small things. I want to speak in the next 2 minutes about 3 truths that I have drawn as a conclusion of just reflecting on how one act changed my life and what sponsorship can actually do in this world. The first thing I'd like to share with you is that sponsorship changes the child. Now, that was me then, and that's me today. Someone asked me, Richmond, does sponsorship work? How can I make a difference in this world? From half the way around the world, I'll tell you this. The one answer that I know for sure is that sponsorship does work. It does change the child. See, I was removed. I was forgotten, lost. If you found me on the street, and in fact I told Heather this, I said, Heather, I've looked at some of the compassion children, their pockets, and some of them are really cute. But I know exactly, because I've seen some of my pictures of when I was a kid that were taken. I was not cute at all. How did you even come about selecting who and choose me? But I'll tell you this, that the moment she did that, my life began to change. The child that was on the street, stripped of dignity and hope, with potential, but the potential was dying. Let me put it this way. That child is grown now, and he stands before you with a bachelor's degree in accounting. He stands before you as one who's done his master's in theology. He stands before you as one who has taken this learning and brought it to over 4,000 pastors across East and Central Africa. One act changed my life completely. I'll say this as there are ripples. Whenever a person chooses to do an act in strength, there are ripples. See, that's me training over 200 pastors in one go. Pastors who are now rooted in the Word. I asked Heather, did you know how far God would take your sacrifice? When you chose to live simply as a 15-year-old so that I could simply live, did you know what God would do with that? She said she had no clue. But all she knew is that she wanted to innovate and to think of ways she could make a difference. And so at the age of 15, she took a babysitting job so she could take care of me. And I thank God every day for that private decision she made that now is touching and changing the world. One act changed my life. And the ripples that have come from that are incredible. But I will also say sponsorship changes the child, but sponsorship also changes the church. See, that man is called Pastor Peter. He loved kids. Pastor Peter, he became the father that I did not have. See, I had never stepped in church. My father was not a believer. Never stepped in church before, but finally, because of the project, I was able to go to the church. And there I met Pastor Peter. received love I had not seen before. Then all of a sudden, this man became my father, and he nurtured me under his wing and developed the leadership in me. I was not ever going to step in the church, I don't think. But what that did for me, it allowed me to enter a place where I could find true love. Not just me. 300 children in Naguru had an opportunity to come into this place where we sang and danced. I remember the songs to this day. Oh, I remember the moves too that we used to do as kids. To this day. Changed my life, brought beauty to my home. You see, there is not a place you will go and find a big sign of Compassion International. While this is the organization that's making a big difference, it partners with the local church, and the local church is the hero. I met people like Pastor Peter who were making a difference. And behind them were ordinary people like Heather who are working through Compassion's ministry. Sponsorship changes the child, but sponsorship also changes the church. I'll say to you one more thing. Sponsorship also changes the sponsor. That man is called Rick Robinson. I happened to go through high school and joined university, and he picked up to sponsor me through college. Rick Robinson flew all the way to Uganda to attend my graduation. Did I tell you there was dancing in my home? The ululation that we did, the hugs that went around, I will never forget that. But lives changing lives. See, your name is connected to another name. This college is connected to communities, to places. It's changing the world. And I believe that even today, some of you might find that your name is connected to another Richmond half the way around the world. Compassion, sponsorship, it works. How do I know it works? Because I'm here. How do I know this sponsorship works? Because my friend Gerald, who had no place, he was living in places where you would not believe, today is the manager of one of the largest Christian stations in Uganda. I know it works because Jennifer Gitiri, a girl who was abandoned, people don't even know who her mother or father is, today is one of the leading lawyers in Kenya. This is how I know sponsorship works. I have come to you today with the reality of what's going on. See, this morning I was sitting and thinking about you, and I was thinking about me, I was thinking about what might happen, and I said, dear God, help me. Some of these individuals have never left the United States. Some of them have never gone to the mission field. How will I communicate in such a way that they are able to open their eyes to the reality happening now? And I got a word that comforted me. He said, they don't need your words. Let me speak to them. And that's what I prayed this morning. That you will not need to hear the words of men to awaken that which is in you to make a difference. But instead that you might hear God's voice call you to a place of courage where you are making a difference in this world. And the verse I wanted to read today was in the book of Luke chapter 3 and verses number 11. John the Baptist is confronted by people who are saying, what shall we do? And this is what John the Baptist said. And the crowd asked John, what shall we do? And John said, the man with 2 tunics should share with him who has none. And the one who has food should do the same. Do you have food? Do the same. Do you have 2 tunics? Do the same. I've met so many people in the 10 African countries I have been in, girls who are the age of going to school and they're not in school. over 400 million children living in extreme poverty. 19,000 children die every year from malaria. Lives lost. Do you have 2 tunics? Give one to one who has none. And do you have food? Give food to the one who has none. My hope and prayer today is as you go from here, that you might consider, instead of rushing off to the next place where you're going, I don't know where you're going after here, but could you pause and say, I will rescue one child. I will not be ahead of the line. I'll stop to make sure that one child has a chance, has the dignity of choice in life. In the hallway, we have brought only 45 children. I wish we had brought more, because I know and I've met many. But I'm hoping that these 45 children today will be connected to one of you, 2 of you, 10 of you, 45 of you who will choose today to rescue a child. I'm going back to my country. And for your attention, I want to use what we usually say to each other whenever we've honored each other with time. I want to use the words asante sana. Asante sana is a Swahili word that says thank you very much. As the Lord calls you, as you choose today to consider what it looks like to live simply so that someone else can simply live, the fact that you've given me your time, and many of you already are sponsoring children, I want to say on behalf of many around the world, asante sana. And I see you at the table as you rescue one child at a time. God richly bless you.